sports figures, and women's sports is trying to bring women's soccer to the Queen City. Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark is reportedly joining FC Cincinnati's bid for Cincinnati.
What if I told you that the most shocking move of Caitlin Clark's rookie year had nothing to do with basketball? That her most game-changing decision didn't happen on the hardwood, but behind closed doors in the boardroom, where she quietly stepped into a role that could redefine the entire future of women's sports? Because that's exactly what happened. Caitlin Clark, the rookie who shattered records, sold out arenas, rewrote the playbook for women's basketball, has just made a move so bold, so unexpected, that it sent tremors far beyond the WNBA. She became a co-owner in a bid to bring professional women's soccer to Cincinnati. At first glance, it might sound like just another celebrity dabbling in ownership, but the deeper you look, the more shocking the truth becomes. This wasn't just an investment. This was a calculated power play, one that combines her star power with billionaire partners, strategic timing, and a vision for women's sports that goes way beyond her rookie season. And to really understand why this matters, we need to step back and look at who Caitlin Clark has already become. Caitlin Clark isn't just another basketball player. She's a cultural earthquake. At Iowa, she rewrote the NCAA scoring books, dropped logo threes that turned into viral moments, and drew television audiences that rivaled men's Final Four numbers. By the time she declared for the WNBA draft, she wasn't just an athlete. She was the face of women's basketball. Her rookie year proved it wasn't hype. She walked into the league and instantly became its brightest star. Rookie of the Year, All WNBA, First Team. The kind of stats that usually take veterans years to reach. Clark posted in her debut season, and with her came an unprecedented wave of attention, record-breaking viewership, sold-out road games, and headlines in every major outlet. In short, the Clark effect was real, and it was massive. But here's where things get interesting. Most rookies, no matter how good, focus solely on the game. Their brand, their endorsements, their legacy. Those things usually come later. Clark? She's moving at a different speed. Instead of waiting a decade to step into ownership like LeBron James or Serena Williams did, she's already planting seeds for a business empire before her WNBA career has even fully started. And the stage she chose for this next chapter wasn't random. It was Cincinnati. The NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, is expanding. Right now, the league is preparing to add its 16th franchise with plans to begin play in 2026. The competition is fierce. Cities like Denver, Cleveland, and Philadelphia have mounted aggressive bids, each pouring resources into their pitch. But Cincinnati might have the strongest hand of all. Why? For starters, the infrastructure is already there. TQL Stadium, one of the most electric soccer venues in North America, is home to FC Cincinnati of Major League Soccer. The fans are rabid, loyal, and loud, routinely packing the stadium and creating an atmosphere that rivals Europe's biggest clubs. For the NWSL, a city like Cincinnati isn't a gamble, it's turnkey. The soccer culture is built in, and that's where Caitlin Clark comes in.
Be a part of the National Women's Soccer League. Our partners at the Cincinnati Enquirer spoke with FC Cincinnati team officials who confirmed that Caitlin Clark is in fact joining as a member of the bidding group.
By aligning herself with FC Cincinnati's ownership group, she's doing more than lending her name. She's strategically attaching the Clark effect to a bid that already has momentum. In other words, she's tipping the scales. The announcement didn't come with a lot of noise. It wasn't a flashy press conference or a staged media event. It was quiet, almost understated. But for those paying attention, it was thunderous. Clark wasn't just supporting a soccer team. She was signaling a bigger move. She doesn't just want to play the game, she wants to own it. And she isn't doing it alone. Behind her is a billionaire backer whose name carries enormous weight in the business world. And once you see who's pulling the financial strings, it becomes clear this isn't just an investment, it's a master plan. But before we get there, let's answer the question a lot of fans were asking. When this news broke, why soccer? Why would the biggest name in women's basketball throw her weight behind an entirely different sport? The truth goes deeper than most people realize. For casual fans, Caitlin Clark's sudden leap into soccer ownership looked random. After all, she's known as the deadliest shooter in college basketball history, not someone chasing goals on the pitch. But the deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't some impulsive side project. Because long before Clark was a basketball phenom, she was a soccer player. Coaches from her youth remember her as aggressive, competitive, and relentless traits that sound almost identical to the way she dominates on the basketball court.
What you got? No pressure!
She had a striker's mentality, powerful shots, uncanny field vision, and the ability to break down defenders with precision footwork. For years, Clark wasn't just dabbling in soccer, she was thriving in it. So when people wondered why she'd back a women's soccer team in Cincinnati, the answer was hiding in plain sight. This wasn't just business. This was personal. She's circling back to one of her first passions, now armed with the resources and the platform to elevate it to a professional stage. It's a return to her athletic roots, but this time, she's not chasing goals herself. She's building the future for others. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. Because Clark isn't making this play alone. Lurking in the background is one of the most powerful women in American business, Meg Whitman. If that name rings a bell, it should. Whitman is a corporate legend, former CEO of eBay, where she grew the company from a small startup into a global powerhouse. Former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, steering one of the biggest tech companies in the world. Her resume is the kind of thing that makes Fortune 500 boardrooms fall silent. And now, she's pouring her weight into Cincinnati's NWSL bid. With her husband, Whitman has invested massive capital, strategic planning, and decades of corporate expertise into making this team a reality. She's not just another rich name attached to a project. She's the kind of operator who turns companies into empires. When you combine Whitman's billions in business acumen with Clark's cultural star power, what you get isn't a bid, it's an almost unstoppable force. This alliance changes everything. It means Cincinnati's pitch isn't just about a city and a stadium. It's about building a blueprint for women's sports that could set the standard for decades.
Cincinnati issued a statement confirming that Clark is a part of the plan. Leaders say her passion for soccer and commitment to elevating women's sports.
A plan meticulously designed, blending the grassroots passion of soccer fans with the gravitational pull of the Clark effect. Think about it, one of the most recognizable athletes of her generation teaming up with a Silicon Valley titan. It's like lightning in a bottle, authentic passion mixed with financial firepower. And together, they're not just asking for a team, they're declaring that they intend to dominate women's sports ownership. And that's exactly why this move sent shockwaves through the WNBA as well. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just securing her place on the court anymore. She's securing her legacy off it. At only 22 years old, she's playing a game most athletes don't even think about until their careers are winding down. But here's the twist. Just as Clark made her move, her biggest rival in basketball, Angel Reese, made hers too. Weeks earlier, Reese quietly bought into the Washington Spirit, locking in her own foothold in the NWSL. Suddenly, the most heated rivalry in women's basketball wasn't confined to the paint or the three-point line. It had spilled into the boardroom. Now Clark and Reese are competing not just for points and championships, but for ownership, market share, cultural dominance. Two rookie stars, barely months into their pro careers, already shaping the future of two separate franchises in an entirely different sport. It's the kind of rivalry that doesn't just sell tickets, it rewrites history. And if their teams ever meet on the soccer field, that wouldn't just be a game, it would be a cultural event, a clash of two moguls in the making. But before anyone declares Cincinnati the inevitable winner, let's pump the brakes. Because Clark and Whitman's goop may be powerful, but they're stepping straight into a battlefield. The competition for that final NWSL slot is brutal. Cities with massive resources, historic sports traditions, and political pull are all in the running. And make no mistake, they're ready to spend whatever it takes. Which raises the question, is Caitlin Clark's presence enough to tip the scales? Or is Cincinnati walking into a fight it can't win? When the news broke that Caitlin Clark was joining Cincinnati's NWSL bid, some people assumed the deal was basically done.
FC Cincinnati provided a statement, there it is, saying in part, quote, "The NWSL Cincinnati bid team is thrilled that Caitlin Clark has joined our ownership group."
How could any league say no to the biggest star in women's sports, linking her name to their expansion? But that's not how this game works. Because behind the scenes, the fight for the 16th NWSL franchise has turned into a high-stakes corporate war, where billionaires, politicians, and sports moguls are all clawing for the same prize. And Cincinnati isn't the only contender. Take Cleveland, for example. Just a few hours north, the city has been mounting an aggressive bid, backed by influential business leaders and a passionate sports community. Cleveland sees itself as the perfect Midwest hub for women's soccer. They've got history, infrastructure, and the financial muscle to make their case loud. Then there's Denver, a booming market with a thriving sports culture. Denver has been growing at breakneck pace and already boasts loyal fan bases for the Nuggets, Broncos, and Avalanche. Adding a women's soccer team to that mix would be a natural fit, and their investors know it. And finally, Philadelphia, a massive market with a rich tradition in nearly every major sport. Philly's pitch is straightforward. We're too big to ignore. With its size, history, and national visibility, Philadelphia can argue it brings scale that few other cities can match. Each of these cities isn't just campaigning, they're battling. They understand the cultural and financial impact of securing an NWSL team, and they're willing to spend whatever it takes to win. That's where the real numbers come in. Expansion fees have skyrocketed. Just a year ago, Boston and Bay FC each paid around $53 million for their spots in the league.
Bringing a women's professional soccer team to our city. Her passion for the sport, commitment to elevating women's sports in and around Greater Cincinnati region.
Now, insiders say the 16th team could cost close to $100 million. That's nearly double in less than 2 years. For most ownership groups, that kind of money is daunting. For Meg Whitman and Caitlin Clark's Citizeny Alliance, it's the price of admission. But here's the catch. Even if they can afford it, money alone doesn't guarantee victory. Because the NWSL isn't just selling a team, they're selling a story, a narrative that can grow their league, attract new fans, and redefine the future of women's sports. That's why Caitlin Clark is Cincinnati's secret weapon. Her presence brings something money can't buy. The Clark effect. She sells out arenas without even trying. She turns WNBA games into must-watch events. Her social media following dwarfs entire franchises. And when she walks into a new arena, she drags millions of eyeballs with her. No other city in the running has that kind of cultural leverage. No other bid can offer the league a figure who practically guarantees national coverage every time she's mentioned. Cincinnati doesn't just have a stadium, a fan base, and a billionaire backer. It has Caitlin Clark, and that could tip the scale. Still, there's a brutal reality here. Clark's involvement is groundbreaking, but it also raises tough questions.
Influence as an athlete and role model for women and girls around the world make her a vital part of our compelling bid to become the 16th team in.
How much of the bid is being powered by her name versus the actual infrastructure? Could the NWSL risk being accused of playing favorites if Clark's star power pushes Cincinnati past cities with bigger markets or deeper pockets? It's a delicate balance. On one hand, the league wants stability and strong ownership groups. On the other, they can't ignore the once-in-a-generation chance to hitch their wagon to the most famous rookie in sports. It's the kind of decision that could shape the league's trajectory for the next decade. But here's the twist most people missed. Caitlin Clark didn't have to do this. She had other offers, big ones. The new unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league reportedly dangled a $1 million paycheck to get her on board. That's nearly 10 times her WNBA rookie salary. Clark turned it down. Instead of chasing a short-term payday, she chose to invest in something long-term, something lasting. That decision speaks volumes. It shows this isn't just a side hustle. It's a vision, a deliberate move to plant herself in the ownership game while she's still at the height of her playing career. And that raises the stakes even higher. Because if Cincinnati wins this bid, Caitlin Clark will become one of the youngest owners in professional sports history, before she's even hit her prime on the court. So now, the entire sports world is watching. Will Cincinnati's calculated play, powered by Clark's star power and Whitman's billions, crush the competition? Or will one of the rival cities outmuscle them with a bigger checkbook and broader reach?
In January, with 6 teams playing 14 games, Clark was offered a reported $1 million to take part, but sources say it is a thanks.
The answer could change not just the NWSL, but the entire trajectory of women's sports in America. At its core, Caitlin Clark's investment in Cincinnati's NWSL bid is about more than soccer. It's about rewriting the rules of what it means to be an athlete in the modern era. For decades, the path was simple: play, win, retire, then maybe move into ownership or business later in life. Legends like Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, or even Serena Williams didn't step into those roles until years after their peak playing days. Clark is skipping the wait. At just 22 years old, she's showing that athletes don't have to choose between dominating on the court and building empires off it. They can do both at the same time, and the comparisons are hard to ignore. LeBron James built Spring Hill Entertainment into a media powerhouse, but it took him nearly a decade to establish. Serena Williams turned her tennis dominance into a venture capital empire, but that pivot came after her prime. Caitlin Clark is making those same kinds of moves as a rookie. She's collapsing timelines, showing a new model where influence translates instantly into ownership. But beyond her personal brand, there's something even more powerful at play here. Clark is sending a message about women's sports as a whole. For too long, women's leagues have been treated like charity projects, something to support rather than something to truly invest in. Clark is flipping that narrative. By putting her own money on the line, she's saying women's sports aren't a side note. They're the future. They're profitable. They're worth building. And she's proving it not by talking about change, but by embodying it. Every ticket she sells out, every TV rating she boosts, every ownership stake she claims, it all chips away at the outdated idea that women's sports can't stand on their own. This is why the Clark effect feels almost gravitational. She's not just creating headlines, she's reshaping the ecosystem. When fans show up for her in basketball, they're exposed to the WNBA. When they follow her into soccer, they'll be exposed to the NWSL. She's cross-pollinating fan bases, dragging new audiences into women's sports, whether they planned on it or not. And that's what makes her Cincinnati move so explosive. It's not just about one city getting a team. It's about building a lasting legacy, one where the next generation of athletes won't have to fight for relevance because the infrastructure is already there. Picture it. A young girl in Ohio growing up watching Caitlin Clark drain threes in the WNBA, then turning around to see Clark's NWSL team fill TQL Stadium with roaring fans. That's not just fandom, that's inspiration. That's the creation of a pipeline, where girls dream of playing not just in one league, but across multiple professional platforms built and owned by athletes themselves. Of course, the fight isn't over. Cincinnati still has to win the bid. The NWSL has to make its decision. And nothing in this process is guaranteed. But whether the city lands the franchise or not, the move has already made an impact. It's shown that Caitlin Clark isn't here just to break records. She's here to break barriers. She's here to build. And if this is what she's doing in year one of her career, the possibilities of what comes next are staggering. Because one day, we may look back on her basketball highlights as just the beginning. The opening act of a story much bigger than a jump shot or a stat sheet. The story of how one rookie dared to step beyond the game and became one of the most influential figures in the history of sports. The game isn't over. In fact, Caitlin Clark may have just begun playing her most important one yet.